Okay, we're going to begin with Holly because she's got the opening prayer today.
I found something called the Justice Prayer from the Social Justice Resource Center, and I really like this. So this is what I'm going to share today. Come, O Holy Spirit, come open us to the wonder and dignity of the diversity found in every culture and in each face and in all experiences we have of the other among us. Come fill us with generosity as we are challenged to let go and allow others to share with us the goods and the beauty of the earth. Come heal the divisions that keep us from seeing the face of Christ in all men, women, and children. Come inspire us that we might celebrate all that is life-giving and restore hope where it has been lost. Come bring us understanding, wisdom, and the courage needed to embrace change and stay on the journey. Come, O Holy Spirit, show us the way.
Very nice.
Absolutely beautiful.
Very nice.
Okay, so next is Evie, who's going to introduce Willie, our guest today.
Okay. Willie Poinsett is a Lake Oswego resident of over 30 years, and she is the co-founder of Respond to Racism. That group was formed 3 years ago to get together to talk about the subject. I actually went to a really neat seminar at the Lake Oswego Adult Center. I don't know, I guess within a couple or 2 years ago, called White Allyship. And she was there, and there was a sprinkling of women, but it was really, really interesting. And in case you don't know what that means, it means becoming educated about racial issues and supporting the anti-racism efforts through action. Another connection I had with Willie, or have had with Willie, is I was getting in the mail this magazine called Lake Oswego Living. And I would just go through it and I just thought, ooh, it's just so white bread. It's just all about rich, white people. And I thought it really grossed me out. I found it offensive. Once in a while, there'd be a sprinkling of an African American person or a person of color. But I just thought it was, and especially now, I just thought it was offensive. And I reached out to her, actually first to Willie's son, who was very involved. And then he said, well, talk to my mom. Then I talked to Willie and she goes, yeah, that's, you know, she didn't use tacky, but I don't know what the word she used. But so I wrote to them and I just said, I just find this magazine very offensive. There's nobody of color. It's just, of course, a friend of mine reminded me, well, it's pretty much, you know, nobody in the middle income bracket can afford living here. This is what this town is kind of about. But, and they just politely, or I don't know, well, we'll just take you off the list then. Sorry that it was so offensive to you, and that was it. Um, I'm I still see that it's around, but I'm really glad it doesn't come to my mailbox because I think it's gross. And the other thing about the White Allyship meeting that was held at the Lake Oswego Adult Center was quite a few women said, you know, I lived in Chicago, or I lived, et cetera, this place, and I came here and I'm just like, I just miss diversity. And it was just a really neat workshop. So those are my couple connections to Willie, and I thought she would be a great person to talk to the group today.
Okay, so for now, we're going to have our mute buttons on, but at any point, if you Either Willie will pause and ask for input, and that's up to her. She's the boss. Or we can raise a hand at any point. Is that okay, Willie?
Any point.
And Diana will see that, right, Diana? She will see you because she's going to have her view on gallery and
Hmm.
what you're doing. So look out. Diane's looking at you.
I'll be watching.
Willie, it's your turn, lady.
Okay, Jan, did you have a question? I saw your hand. Oh, okay. All right. Uh, Hi, everybody. I'm very informal, so let's keep it light. I thought that I would start by telling you just a little more about me, who I am, where I came from, how did I get out here. And I've been here, as Evie said, over 30 years, over 34 years to be more exact. My son just had his 32nd birthday. And so much of my work now is a result of the experiences that he had going through all of the Lake Oswego schools. So, a little about my background, about who I am, and I'm going to try to share my screen. Um, and I did say try. Let me see if I can do it. If I, oh my goodness, no, there's too much stuff up there for you to see. Hold on.
Do you have a visual you're trying to show us?
I'm going to, yes,
Okay.
yes. I will, we'll do that in just a minute. It'll come up.
And Kathy, have you given her authority to share?
I don't need to.
Oh, I thought you did as the host. Sorry.
No.
No, I can share my screen. Okay. There. Okay. So, this little baby there is me. And that was my mother. Actually, my brother said she brought me home when I was 2 days old, and that's all they know. So, this is the only mother I've known. And then as I grew up as a cute little girl, I want you to know, I thought I was cute. I go, look at those eyes. I was cute when I was little. Um, but my mom, I was born in the 40s, okay? So let's put it in perspective. But I found out my mom was born in, this mom, in 1899. And so that's a very long time. And this is a picture of her and my sister in law near the end of her life. She died in 1985 in South Carolina. So, first of all, born in South Carolina, so I want you to understand that part of it so you'll know when I start to talk about the Jim Crow laws. But I just want to share, I have another picture I want to share with you too. Once I get it open. Let's see. Uh-oh. I did something wrong. Hold on. I have to get back to where I want to go. I'm also learning technology, by the way.
Yes. You and me both.
Okay, let's see. And I have to show you another picture of me. This is the cute one. Another cute one. And then I'll stop being cute, okay? If I get back to share screen. All right, now I can't find my picture. Okay, so I guess I'm going to forget about being cute and just talk to you instead of taking up time. So let me just get a chance to see you. Born in South Carolina during Jim Crow days, in a little country without running water or electricity, and we were poor. My mom went to third grade, but she didn't finish. My dad had two children from a previous marriage, and they both went to seventh grade and didn't finish. So I'm the first success story of getting through seventh grade in my family. And that may sound weird and odd, I guess, for some, but it was privilege, sense of privilege, and the others, and we were the others, where the poverty, the color of our skin, there was no big attempt to educate people of color. And so I was always excited about things. I didn't have people ask, "What was your favorite book as a child?" I was like, "Well, I didn't have any real favorite books." They said, "Well, what did you do? Didn't you go to the library?" And I go, "No." In South Carolina, the library was for white people and not people of color. And my mother didn't read, so what she had was her Bible. She did read the Bible, and she had the hymn book and Daily Word, if any of you remember that publication. And we got the newspaper. And that was it for reading materials for me. And then I went on to my father died, my mother remarried, and we went further out in the country. I mean, way out in the woods. And again, no electricity, no running water or anything. We had a well. And so I learned how to pump water from the well, and I learned how to use the outhouse that was down by the grapevine, which were they had the best grapes. So I don't know if it was something from the outhouse that helped to make the grapes sweet, but I can still taste those grapes many years later. And I stayed there, and I went to a little country school. And then when I was in sixth grade, a teacher walked out of the class and asked that no one talk at all. And I was a teacher, pleaser. If the teacher said don't talk, you couldn't pry my mouth open. But some other kids did talk. And she said for the whole class, line up. And she had us line up, and she had a big leather strap on like an axe handle type thing, um, or like a hatchet handle, I guess, or something smaller. But she hit each one of us, and so unfortunately, I'm like holding my right hand because every time I tell this story, I hold my hand. That's how traumatized I was then to be hit like that. And I went home and my arm was still swollen, and my mother said, "This is not going to work. I can beat her or hit her with, but she didn't hit me with the belt. It was a switch, but no one else was to touch me." And so with that, she talked to her husband and said she had to do something because she needed to find someplace else for me, something better than the segregated schools down here. And at the time, white people would advertise down south in the paper in down south for maids. So my mother applied to be a sleep-in maid, and she applied with for a job in New Jersey. She got a job and had me go live with another friend for 2 months while she tried out the job, and they figured out that it would work. And she came back and got me. While she was trying out the job, um, she also, let's see, how many people, just put your hand up if you saw the movie The Help or read the book? Okay, thank you. For those who saw it, my mother was the help. I could have written that book. And so she got off every Thursday, and you saw all the other maids. They were at the bus stops going into a town that had some diversity. And she found a little, went to a little church there, black church, and found a couple who had a rooming house, and asked them if they would rent me a room. And she would come and see me every Thursday and every other Sunday. And they did. And so at seventh grade, I was on my own there to go to school. The family just gave me dinner, and I had a place to stay. I made my own breakfast, which was cereal or something, and lunch I took care of at school. And so that, if you knew of a seventh grader living in a rooming house now, you'd be horrified and call in DHS. But it was back some days, and that didn't happen. But we did that for a year until my mother was able to get the lady of the house where she worked to allow her to come in and do day work. So we used to call it, she's go to work early in the morning, out there to get a bus, and come back late. And we lived in a rooming house until we got a place in the projects. And I'm saying that because when I look at where I was living in subsidized housing until I was a freshman in college, and my mother announced to me around November or so that she was going to be moving back to South Carolina with her to be with her husband, because she felt that I was able then to handle myself and be on my own without her support. And so that's what she did. She packed up and we moved her back down the south. And I came back and I started living in rooming houses again because I was in college. And anyway, so I graduated, and ironically, I had struggles, not academic, but just I was emotionally, it was a hard time for me. And the dean of students, who turned out to be a white woman from Portland, Oregon, I would never have thought that my life would, that you never know. And she, Dean Scully, she was like all family to me and very supportive, and just wanted the best for me, and I could just go there, and she was just a great support. And so that's what happened. I finished college. Dr. Scully wanted me to go to Columbia, and I said, no, don't have that kind of money. I really need to work and I majored in elementary education, got a job in the low income area of Paterson, New Jersey. And that's where I wanted to work with children in the low income area. At the time, I wasn't versed enough to know that your zip code very often determines what kind of education you get. Didn't know that then. Didn't realize it for a long time. I was just like, I wanted to help the people because I knew white kids were getting things, but I wanted to help the kids who didn't have the support. And so I was a third grade teacher, and then I became some other levels of support staff, and then I became a vice principal. And my first job as a vice principal, I worked with, I don't know if any of you have ever seen or heard of the movie Lean on Me. Anyone? Any hands? Okay, I was Joe Clark's vice principal, believe it or not. We did it first at the elementary school, and when he was assigned to the high school, he said, "You have to go. You're with me. You're my person." So I did it for 1 year, and then became a principal. And then one weekend, I got a call from a friend who said, "We've got a friend in town from Oregon. You want to go out?" I didn't know if the friend was male or female. I didn't even ask. I said, "Sure," and pick me up. And so we went out, and it was a male, and I met him, and the next night we saw each other, and I thought, this man is really weird. He's from halfway around the world. He's like no one I've ever dated, so, nothing will happen. And to top it off, I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. And then he sent me a postcard from the hotel. When you used to stay at hotels, they'd have the postcards and you could use them. I go, he sent me a free postcard. But a year and a half we got married, okay? And that's what brought me to here because he lived in Selwood and we came here and I said, I'm not staying with you in your house where you had all of your other women as a single man, so I want something different. And we lucked out with a friend selling this house, and we've been here ever since. So that's the Willie of me. Any questions? Okay. And then so I applied for a job and got a job here as a principal in Portland Public Schools, and I spent 26 years working there. I spent 19 years in New Jersey in education, and 26 here, formerly 26. I retired, and then they got me to go back for about 3 years. And then I realized that I said, I'm retired. I'm out of it. So the teacher in me is still there, and I'm real talkative. But I told you then in the beginning, my son had the problems here from racism as a preschooler. I started him up at Touchstone, which was in Mountain Park. He was the only black kid for the whole time he attended, which was right before he turned 3 until he finished 3rd grade there. And there was about 6 months. There was another black kid, but he had behavior issues. And I got a call from the principal that said, your son said a bad word. I go, what? She said, well, it's really not like him, but I think it's the boy he's associating with. I was like, oh my God, my poor little child. But I don't know for you, if you were to drive up to the school, and as you're driving there, you look and you see your preschooler in the middle of a sandbox with kids picking up pails and throwing them at him, pails of sand, saying, take this, take this, take this. And they talked about his skin, talked about his hair, but he was not aware of what really, really was happening, I don't think, at the time, but it impacted him. And then he got to kindergarten, and there was a little boy there in the class from the Middle East. So they were the only 2 people of color then at the school. And the teacher would pull together the reading groups, but let them continue playing with toys. And then they had an expedition, that's what I call it, an expedition for the parents of how well the kids were reading. And they had all the kids there. The other little boy didn't show up, but my son got up there and he struggled because I wasn't pushing him. I thought, okay, I'm not going to be one of those educators that just has to do push, push, push. I want my child not to be so stressed. And he couldn't read, but I promised him that night on the way home. I said, Mom's going to teach you how to read. And you will never be embarrassed like this again. And I did. He picked it up just like that. And then there was the little, I guess, a little thing of that was popular for a while. Now I've forgotten the name of the book, Goosebumps or something. Goose something.
Goosebumps. That's right.
Right. I said, and he got into them in 1st grade. And so they said, you're letting your child read Goosebumps? I said, look, I've looked at the books. He doesn't, if he can read it, it's okay. Because he doesn't have any clues there to help him. And I listened to him read out loud and what have you. And I said, and his teacher was fine with him doing that. And he's developed a love for reading, and which has not stopped. He reads all the time. All the time. He's online. Oh my God, he's sickening. He reads so much, but I can't say he's that. And so here I am, retired, and you know the thing, beginning of responding to racism. But I was active during the civil rights movement. I had a chance to be in the presence of Dr. King. He came to New Jersey because the pastor there had worked with him, and we were getting ready to do a march and trying to get black principals in the school district. And he came. He spoke to us. Well, actually, two places. He did each at the or sermon at the church, and then we had something at the high school. And when he was with the church, I was like the third person in from the aisle when he came down, and I was like, "Oh my God! I could have just reached out and touched him or something." But he was magnificent, and I won't ever forget it. And then when I was up with Joe Clark at the high school, he invited Rosa Parks to come and speak. And my job was to host and entertain her while they were waiting. What a what a great job. What a great job. And she was the sweetest lady. And just her kind, you couldn't I don't know how anyone could ever be angry in the room with her. You know, it's just so much. And so they inspired me, though, by the work that they did. And I kept that in mind because I've always disliked inequality. I didn't understand it. I know the life that I had as a child. I know that there are people still living like that, even though the hoods are off with the KKKs. But when I read the history out here about Oregon, you know, we were not intended to be here and weren't allowed to be here. And so all of that just fuels me to think about what do we have to do? What do I have to do to be different? What do I have to do to make a difference? What do I have to do to make a difference in my own thinking? And until sort of recently, I have a confession. I used to say I can't be a racist because to be a racist, you have to have power and privilege and all of that stuff. And started listening more to Ibram X. Kendi's work on about being how to be an anti-racist. And I said, I think I was very racist. I can be racist. And my and I can be able to talk about it, recognize it, and take some steps to be an anti-racist. And so when Evie was telling me about reading, it seems like so long ago, you were reading white privilege? No, white fragility. And I was going to talk about some of that and where you were. And I don't know, you've probably read several books since then. But I wanted to just talk with you, not at you. So I want to be open to questions, and then I'll start telling you more about what you want to hear. Sydney, I saw your hand first. Unmute yourself, though.
There we go. I just want to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you because we have New Jersey in common.
Oh,
As grown up, and you know, we're colleagues of the same age time and the civil rights movement. And when I moved here to go to law school back
so
in
I have to
89,
ask you, what part of New Jersey?
Madison, we were in the zip code where we got a good education.
Okay.
In Morris County. I grew up in the era of the Episcopal churches doing pulpit exchanges with the black churches in Newark,
Oh, okay.
which was a half-assed thing, but you know, it was better than nothing, I guess.
Right, right.
Some of my classmates were on the Pettus Bridge. My parents
Okay.
wouldn't let me go
Right.
because I was 15, I guess. But I just want to talk and talk and talk because when I moved here to go to law school, I was horrified by how white it was.
Mm-hmm.
And my little white girls, for some reason, really liked black babies. They had black Barbies and black Cabbage Patch. One they took one of my daughters took it for show and tell, and at the bus stop, the neighbor kids that were good friends said, "Why do you have an N-word baby?"
Mm-hmm.
And she ran all the way home crying, and it was just coming here was a shock to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had done time in Indiana, which is a KKK
Mm-hmm.
stronghold, but this was so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to get to know you better. Thanks for being here.
Oh,
Thanks
yes,
for telling
I
your
love.
stories. So did you grow up in Patterson, or was that where you taught?
I grew up in Hackensack.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
graduated from Hackensack High School, and then I moved to Patterson.
Okay, well, my daughter is now a vice principal in the DC district.
Ah,
I
okay.
think we did okay on the racism thing because she's married to a African American Latina woman, and they've adopted a black-white daughter. So
All right.
I guess we got past growing up in Oregon, but man, it was a chore. Anyway, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize this, but I want to have coffee with you when this is. it's
Oh,
COVID now.
okay. All right. Anyone else? Yes. Yes, Evie. You're muted.
So yes, thank you, Willie. I really appreciated hearing your background and where you came from and what led you to Oregon and everything. I guess I don't have at the moment. I don't have a question. I just wanted to share that, you know, a lot of companies, organizations, agencies are, with what happened this summer, are really buckling their employees to embracing them to do a lot of reading and researching and on diversity. And so my sister works for Washington County in Hillsborough, which actually has a high percentage of Latino.
Mm-hmm.
But they've been doing a lot of work and reading and book groups and stuff. And so they were sharing, they were looking at Seeing White, and a very good podcast of about 5 or 6 podcasts, how the concept of race was developed. And along the way, one of the things that I learned about was, let's see, where is it? Oh, the term microaggressions.
Yes.
And I was like, well, what's that? Well, I found out it's the everyday slights, put downs, and insults that marginalized people experiences in their daily interactions, such as, wow, you speak good English, or hey, can I touch your hair?
Yes.
Or one of the things I did once, I said to somebody, I used to live in Africa, Algeria, with our parents were doing overseas work in Algeria. So I always got a kick out of meeting Arabic people and stuff because I lived over there for a couple summers while I was going to school. And so we were just walking around Smith State Rock Park here in Redmond. I never say that right. Smith Rock State Park. Anyways, and so I saw these Middle Eastern guys and I said, oh, hey, where are you from? And, you know, I was just trying to be friendly, but, you know, nowadays that's, it's not right. You have to be more careful with.
So what was the problem? What was the problem that you just did? What was the microaggression, I guess?
Well, it's assuming they're from the Middle East or assuming that they're Islamic or, you know, I mean, of course, in my heart, I was just like, oh God, I used to, you know, I would have loved to say, well, I lived in Algeria and, you know, even say something Arabic to them, you know, but so the microaggression was assuming, I mean, they could have been Pakistani. They could
have been born here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
and that's where are you from is one of those ones that we're sort of all guilty of.
And initially you think, oh, I was just being friendly. Well, no, you got to start thinking about what comes out of your mouth, which I have a problem anyways. But that microaggression was really a good lesson for me.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Diana.
Um, I I came from Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Denver to here. Um, and each was unique in its own way, but somehow I expected Oregon to be so progressive. And it's a long story as to how I ended up in Lake Oswego per se, but I too was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the question I want to ask you, I can't even fathom what it has been like for you for 32 years, 34 years living in Lake Oswego. Are your neighbors nice to you? Have they always been? What is it like to be Black and live in Lake Oswego? It's hard enough for somebody who's not a classy white. I am as down to earth as a person can be. And I see what Evie was talking about with LO Living. I see it every day. What's
Mm-hmm.
it like for you?
So I think I have a little more tolerance, although I'm running out of it now. I had a little more as tolerance because I got here, I saw the neighborhood, and I said, "Oh my God, I have never lived in the neighborhood like this. This is, and we don't have a big house or anything, like that." Um, but I thought I had arrived, and I got caught up. My bad is what I call it. I got caught up for a little while being in this area, not seeing. I got blinded there. I was sort of I was into myself and happy, and it was different, and I couldn't believe it. And then stuff started happening, little by little. Went to the supermarket. I'm just going down the aisle with my cart, and this white woman looked up at me and grabbed her purse, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." And that was early on with me being here, and it happened again last year at Costco. I couldn't believe it. This lady was very comfortable. She was at the uh, optical desk, and we were all standing in line, and she was just talking, what have you, and her purse and everything had been there for a long time. And she turned around and looked up at me and immediately went and grabbed and tied up everything there. And I was like, "Are you for real?" No, I used some other bad words, but I'm with a Christian group, so I'm going to be nice today. But I could not believe it. I'm thinking, it's 2019 here in Lake Oswego. Why are you grabbing your purse? But it happens. And so the reality has hit me. I stopped working, and Portland is racist too. So don't get away with the thing. But I came back to this little bubble, and I realized that we live in a bubble. And one of the things that's bothering me personally now is that I've been in this bubble so long that I have almost, I don't know, I wrapped myself up so that I'm not feeling directly some of the stuff that's still going on. So I had to get myself together, because I go to a church in Portland, but it's primarily white. When I started, I went there because it was about 50-50, with blacks and whites, and I go, "Oh, whoa, this is nice." And there was a black pastor there at the time, but she left, and since then we've had white men, Japanese man, and we have a white woman now. And I said, "But most of the congregation is now white, and so it's not the same, and I'm not connected." And so I had to call my church out on it too, to say that we're in this little bubble in this church and stuff's happening. I said, "I'm over here living in Lake Oswego talking about it and worshiping in another place, and not acknowledging that we are not getting off the dime about race and racism. And so, what does it mean to be an anti-racist? It means that I have to start looking first of all at me, and I can't beat myself up, but I have to also know about all of those things, that the systems that are in place, the things that exist that are racist. It's taking one thing at a time, taking it down one and analyzing and saying, okay, when I used to say very basic, I say you can start with yourself. Where do you shop? Where do you go out to dinner? If you have children, who do they play with? What are the faces that they see? Who is at the house and who's not at the house? Who are your friends? Because that really influences who their friends are. And that's basic, that you start to think about some of this stuff and say, whoa, what books do you have on your shelves? I mean, I just sort of peel it down piece by piece so that you can see whether or not you have some work to do to become an anti-racist in your life. And we all do. And as I said a few minutes ago, I thought I was couldn't be a racist, and I had a conversation actually with a friend from New Jersey this morning, and I said, remember a while back with the pandemic, we were talking about restaurants, and our president was talking about this being a Chinese disease, and she said, yes, I'm not going to any Chinese restaurants now. I said, do you realize what you were doing? Do you realize what you were doing? You were being very racist then. You took something that someone else said and you adopted it. It became real for you. And so I say to each of you, privileged because you're white, privileged because you live in Lake Oswego. I don't know if you have lots of money or a little bit of money, or you're making it from check to check right now. But use your privilege, but check yourself. Check yourself. Think about the things that you do, the things that we talked about, microaggressions. I don't know, Evie, if you want me to send you, just a sheet or anything. I can send some things that you can share with the group, if you want to. So let me know what kinds of things you want, so
Sure,
that
that'd
you
be
can
great.
understand the microaggressions.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Anything else? Have you read, and how many people have read How to Be an Anti-Racist?
Not
With
yet.
one person? Would you recommend it for the rest?
Yes,
Sydney?
yes, I would. My daughter sends me anti-racist materials all the time because most of the students in her school are BIPOC. And
Oh,
she's
you have the language. Okay, does
She's-
everybody know?
What did you say?
Does everybody know what BIPOC means?
No.
No.
I do.
Oh, I do. Yes. People of color, POC.
Oh,
Almost.
Black, indigenous people of color.
Indigenous people of
Okay.
So black,
There's my
indigenous people of color.
Hold it
Well,
up, Diana. Hold it up.
Ah, there's the book. Here's the book.
What I would like from you, Willie, is for you to come to our meetings and just join us.
Oh,
If you ever
fun.
so is it
I would love that.
every Monday
Monday.
or every Monday?
Every Monday.
Well, you have my contact.
Okay.
every Monday
That's what I
at
want.
12.
I wasn't even looking at the clock. Oh my God, I've been talking a long time, huh?
It's
That's good.
okay. We're not looking at it. Elaine, you had your hand up.
Yes, and a couple things. I've been concerned because of a friend of mine. um, who cares a great deal about being, well, in this case, it was a Native American. She was concerned that what she was doing would be offensive to Native Americans, which was making dolls with Victorian clothing. And she said, you know, we took their land away, but I don't know if I can even make these dolls without being offensive. And but the main thing I wanted to say was the point on that was, I think sometimes we go so far that that it may be harmful to us and still not be helpful to the anti-racism issue. But the thing that I really wanted to share was that I just spent the week with my son and his 3 cousins from California. The niece is dating a black guy, which is not unusual, doesn't make any difference in our family. But what they were telling me is that they are a generation that really doesn't see, doesn't care, recognizes, and goes on with it.
Mhm.
They're from the Bay Area, so they have lots and lots of friends of different color and different cultural backgrounds,
Mhm.
and it's just
How
kind of
how old
a
are they?
hope for the future.
How old?
They range from my niece at 15 to my son at 26.
Right. And so my son at 32
Mm-hmm,
is part of that group where,
mm-hmm,
one, they're fighting racism. You know,
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
fighting the isms,
mm-hmm,
but they have a lot more energy, and they have a lot less patience than we do.
mm-hmm,
And so if you think about a lot of the demonstrations, and not the destructive stuff down in Portland, that's a whole different kind of group. But
Mhm.
the people who were demonstrating night after night, the quiet, the peaceful
Mhm.
demonstrations, if you look, they're young people. There are a few of us that try to hang out there with them, but there are young people that are doing it, and I think they're going to make a difference.
I hope so.
I hope so. I hope
Um,
that they will make a difference, and that we old folks will be there to support them
mm-hmm,
and do our part to make change. So we each have to do something. No matter what color you are, what gender you are, whatever you're claiming to be, we each have something to do to try to make it better. We have to know that we're built on systemic racism.
mm-hmm.
So there's nothing we can change about the history, but we can make a change about what's going on now.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so we have to
Thank you.
look at that. You have to know your history. And so when you get to look at Lake, how many people have studied Lake Oswego's history?
Well, we know a little bit about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the place to start. If you're living here, you want to know about the place where you live. You know, you find out whose land you stole, or that not you personally, that was stolen, and what happened, and some of the laws, and why we're known as Lake No Negro.
Right.
And when I've talked to some white people, they get offensive, and I say, I know I live in Lake No Negro. I don't need people to remind me of it. I know it, but black people often remind me of where I live,
Mhm.
and why am I doing anti-racist work here, or anti-racism? Why we're doing that is because we need to respond to it. There's a lot of racism still here in our systems, in how we do things, and if we just go and dig a little bit, even with our churches. Do you all belong to the same church?
Mhm.
Most of us.
Okay, but think about your churches. When we worship in person, there's starting to be a little more mixture, a little bit more, but we need to see who is not there, and who can we invite? Who can we share our love with? Yes.
Willie, my name's Evelyn, and I've been at Christ Church for a little under 2 years. And
Mm-hmm.
Part of my background is in pastoral ministry. And one of the spiritual needs that we talk about, well, we talk about being loved and a sense of being loved and being able to love, a sense of forgiveness, being able to forgive, and a sense of belonging. And when I went to Christ Church, after attending Catholic Church for many years, and the last in Portland was actually at 6th and Burnside. St. Andre Bessette Catholic Church was right there on the edge of Skid Row, and I love that. But when we moved to Lake Oswego, I attended different churches, and I came and fell in love with the liturgy, actually, in the sense of prayerfulness at Christ Church. But when I attended, I asked myself very intentionally, can I belong here? Will I experience a sense of belonging? And I looked around at the services that I went to, and I saw an Asian woman. And then at one service, I saw our senior warden, Richard Genesee, who is African American. And I saw I saw probably 6 other people of color, some of them children.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt at home, but I was intentionally looking for people of color who were worshiping within this congregation. And probably like you, I have a lot of stories of experiencing racism as I was growing up in Astoria, Oregon, stories about my parents and how they were treated, how poorly they were treated, being with my mother when she went, for example, to OHSU for a medical appointment. And the person who was doing intake looked to me and said, "Does your mother speak English?" And I said, "Well, why don't you ask her?" But it was just that presumption that she didn't know how to speak English. And looking at me, because I was younger, that perhaps I might have a little bit of capability in the English language. I have to say that every story I hear and every opportunity I have to speak about those experiences and to integrate that is a process of healing for me, because that, those memories run pretty deep. And when we learned, and perhaps you know this, that we have a new bishop coming who's Japanese American.
Oh, wow.
I went, hooray, this is just wonderful. And I don't know that I'll ever get a chance to meet her personally, but I expect that there will be some of her background that really influences and gives life and energy to the awareness of diversity in our church culture and in our culture here in Oregon. So I want to thank you for sharing and say to you that that it's important for me to hear other people of color share their experiences. I used to be pretty involved when I lived in Eugene in the 80s, working with a number of different justice groups. And so having come to Portland area first, and then Lake Oswego the last 4 years, I haven't been so engaged, but I have been reading and speaking with people one-on-one. And so it's just a process of I think continuing to educate myself and to be healed from those earlier experiences. So thank you so much for what you shared.
Thank you. You just triggered one with me, because one of the interim pastors we had at our church was Japanese. Man, he's since passed away. But oh my God, Reverend Jack was just incredible. Not only his family had to be in those internment camps that they had out there. Yes, he was in elementary school then when they had. So he talked about that, but then he slept in the bed that Martin Luther King slept in. He worked down in Mexico with he was like all over with the different movements, and just had stories to tell and what have you. And we loved him. So when you said that, it was like, oh, she sparked a happy memory. I'm listening to her and to those people. I also want to invite all of you to our monthly meetings, Respond to Racism. I didn't talk about the organization today, but we have monthly meetings on the first Monday night, and they're virtual now. It's harder and not quite the same as in person because I love the in person groups. But we still are having meetings, so you can go to our website at respond to racism, all one word, .org, and see some of the things that we're doing now and see if you would like to join us at all. And I'd love to be invited back. You've already invited me, but someone has to send me a little invitation about your meetings so I can hang out and share and talk with you and get to know you. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for me? Not.
I do.
Yes.
Well, because I was a teacher in Lake Oswego, and you talked about your son having
Yes.
a problem.
Yes.
And we heard about kindergarten and start
That was preschool.
preschool.
I didn't even talk about elementary school,
Uh,
where the kids pretended to be friends and took him out in the back and sucker punched him, each
Oh.
one. I didn't tell you about the problems that they didn't believe he was as smart as he was, and they tried to keep him in a level in the classroom. And he's like, I already did all of this. And so I had to go, and the principal and teacher decided that the only way they would move him up is that he had to get 100% on everything for a month. Now, I wasn't asking for a grade level move. I was asking for a level of the materials that they were using in the language arts program to move him up. Well, he got 100% on every single thing for 1 month. And they said, that's my, I go, 100% is not mastery. That's not what you have to do to be mastery. But I had to argue there. I argued a couple of times in elementary. And then he told me, he stopped talking to me about things because they arranged a play date, and it was a play date where they made they said it was going to be all fun and they'll all be playing. Well, they were beating him up again. And then we got to junior high school, and I was told that he didn't look like a tag kid. And then at high school, he decided to play basketball, and he was on the varsity team. And all kinds of things happened with basketball. So that's my school story.
I was afraid of that because I knew it wasn't good because you said so, but I'm still shocked. I'm still very shocked and sorry.
Well, I'm finding out more and more now as he talks about all of the traumatic things that happened. And he said he didn't want to tell me because he said, I told you once and you went to see the principal and it got worse. They called me a snitch all the way through high school.
Willie, where did he go to college?
U of O.
Okay. And
He's a writer.
was he more accepted at U of O than he was at schools?
Falsely. He was turned out his roommate had the same birthday. They were born the same day, the same age, and he had a white roommate, and they decided to join a fraternity, and he was the only person of color at all in the fraternity, and some awful things happened. And when they started drinking, ugly words came out. And they just said, oh, it was alcohol, or we're just kidding. And it took him, till the end of, almost the end of his sophomore year to realize that it was not good, and to start moving, to do some healing for himself out of that trauma. So we've had a journey.
Does he live in Lake Oswego?
No, he lives in Tigard.
Okay.
Yes, he got married, and he and his wife live in Tigard now. I've been trying to get them to come back and live with us because I need the youth around me to stay young. I keep saying, you can come. It's not a big house, but you can come live with us. And they want their own life, so I'll give them some more time and say, come on, because he's a I told you, a writer, and he's a freelance writer. He worked for a newspaper in Portland for a while, but he's a freelance writer. And so that all depends on, the work that you get. And I was like, oh, you have such a, my mama had ideas because he had very high math scores. He had very high, his scores were high. And his answer to me was, he told me that you always told me to follow my passion. And my passion is writing. And he's been recognized for his writing since elementary school. So there he is.
Wow.
That's my life. My husband works in, he's supposed to be retired, but his background is in construction safety, heavy construction. So he loves to be out there when they're building the buildings, and he takes pictures of him on the scaffolds up on the roof as they're building things before the elevators are put in, and he's excited. That's his life. That's his joy.
That's what we're all searching for, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Find them my joy. Okay, I've talked too long. Okay.
I don't think so. I think we could sit here longer, but we have decided, we used to meet Willie for an hour and a half when we were in person, but it's harder to sit still when you're in Zoom,
Right.
so
Hour and a half is a long time.
I think it is. So anyway, I think we'll try to wind it up. And if you have any final words, maybe you've already said them.
I think I've said enough.
Yeah.
I've said enough.
Well, we thank you so much. and
So much.
Yes.
I think we'd love to have you again if you
Well,
are
send
willing.
me a Zoom invitation and I'll come hang out with you. How's that?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take care.
All right.
And thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Willie.
Okay.
Hi.
So let's see. Holly, do you want to lead us in the Lord's Prayer to finish, or do you want to have some conversation? How you felt about that?
Not me. I will lead in the prayer. Does somebody else want conversation?
Is the recording still on?
Yes, I think
Oh,
turn that off right now.